Hi, welcome back to the John Sinclair TV, back again. And today we are going to discuss Dougie Freedman and is he the right fit for Newcastle United? And if you like what you watch, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. And if you'd like to become a member, it's just 99p. If you'd like to super chat is open as well. And I've got Natty from EyedFootball, been on this channel before, and he's a great guy. He knows everything Palace inside and out. Good evening to you, Natty.
Yeah, big up, John. Big up. How you doing?
Great, man. Lost a bit of weight as well, and I lost 11 pounds, and now down to 14, 12, 14, 13 morning weight, and I'm happy. So how are things for you?
I'm still recovering from last night's football because we're recording this on Tuesday night, just after Palace smashed Man United 4-0. And I did have to check my phone this morning to make sure that actually happened. I didn't just see it on a game of FIFA or something like that. That actually did happen. So, yeah, 3 words for you, John. Glad or over?
Fat, absolute fat, and well done to you as well. What a job Oliver Glasner's doing in a minute as well. So should be Oliver Glasner, should be Glasner, because that guy is a brilliant manager as well. But that's for another time. We are going to do a scouting report on Dougie Freedman, and he has been linked with Newcastle United as a sporting director. And not only that, I mean, he's on the short list of 2. The other one is some unnamed European one called Paolo Maldini, I believe. But Eddie Howe wants an English sporting director, so he knows the Premier League inside and out. And I've got the right guy, Natty, to tell us all about Dougie Freedman. And if you just tell my chat as well, Newcastle fans, who is Dougie Freedman, number 1? And secondly, what will he bring to the table if he is going to be our sporting director?
Okay, so not to go too far down memory lane here, but basically Dougie Freedman, for a good spell of his career, was a Crystal Palace legend. He had multiple spells at the club. Yeah. He scored a very famous goal away at Stockport, which kept us in the old First Division, what is now the Championship. And in 2012-13, going forward a fair few years now, he was in, I think, the 2nd or 3rd year of his management spell at the club, where he took over from George Burley, and then he left for Bolton. Now, at the time, Bolton Wanderers were a recently relegated Premier League side, so they had the benefit of just coming down from the Premier League, so they still had a majority Premier League squad. And at the time, people could see the logic of going to a club that has a much higher budget, much better infrastructure and the whole thing. But when you look at the club he left for the club he went to, the club he left were 4th in the Championship. The club he went to were 18th. So to see a Palace side chasing promotion lose a club legend as manager, who, it didn't matter how good or bad we were, he had the backing of the fans, win, lose or draw. It didn't matter to us if we got battered by anyone. So long as Freedman was in charge, we were like, you know what, Dougie will come good. Just give it time. So fast forward a few more years, Palace get promoted in 2013, in May of 2013, and we slowly start to establish ourselves as a Premier League side. And then all of a sudden, Dougie Freedman is named as the club sporting director. Now, Palace fans don't have short memories. This guy left us in the lurch for Bolton in 2012, and now he's come back. And then in the documentary that was released when Eagles Dare, he openly admits he regrets moving because on paper it was the right thing to do, because Bolton at the time had bigger budget, better players, the whole thing. But Freedman came back and was determined to prove to the fans that he can do a good job at Crystal Palace. And being an ex-Premier League, well, he isn't but being an ex-Crystal Palace player, he knows what the club looks for in players, because he was the one who signed Yannick Bolasie, Mile Jedinak, Damien Delaney, Joel Ward. He signed, bear with me, I'm trying to go back through the players he did sign when he was manager. Peter Ramage, who Newcastle fans would know from his time up on Tyneside. So, there are a few players that, okay, not a lot of these would be, your Hollywood player names, but they all did their job to get Palace to where we are now. And, we look back fondly on players like Peter Ramage, who by no means was an amazing player, but he did a job for you. But so Freedman gets the sporting director job, and we're all thinking, okay, we've got a club legend as director of football. We've got a club legend in Mark Bright over the academy. We've got a chairman who's a fan of the club in Steve Parish. So all the boxes are being ticked, but we need to see, can Dougie Freedman do that director of football role? And initially, a lot of his transfer business was missed. And I'm not trying to alarm any Newcastle fans watching, but you have to understand he came into this highly inexperienced. So we did have to give him a bit of a wide berth where he signed players like Alexander Soloth, Erdal Rakip, Yaroslav Yak. Of those three, I think one was half decent, and even he didn't do that well for Palace in the Premier League, which in hindsight, seeing as he tore it up in the Bundesliga, I'm like, maybe we should have given him a bit more of a try. But the one thing that Freedman has to be credited for is the so-called transformation under Patrick Vieira, because Freedman identified Joachim Anderson, Mark Gay, Eberechi Eze, Michael Olise, Jean-Philippe Mateta, and Odson Edouard. Of those 7 I've just named, only Ebere Eze was signed under Roy Hodgson. The rest were signed under Patrick Vieira. So when you're looking at it and you're saying you can get Ebere Eze and Michael Olise for a combined fee of 24 million, 16 and 8 respectively for Eze and Olise, that's unheard of now. Because you're easily talking that Olise could be, with inflation, around the bracket of 60 to 70 million. Yeah. If you really wanted to push that higher bracket. I mean, I'm not saying he is a 70 million pound player, but in the current market, you could easily argue if he's a Newcastle player and Real Madrid want him, Newcastle can say, yeah, you can have him, but we want 70 million on the table as an opening bid. So that's the sort of thing that Freedman's very good at, is that he's good at bringing in gems from the lower leagues of English football and bringing in players from the Bundesliga and Ligue 1 that you haven't watched a minute of, but you're thinking, hang on, he would have watched this player religiously. It's not just watch a brief comp of him on YouTube and hope to God he matches what you saw in that skills video. No, he scouted Michael Olise from early. And think about it, John. If you're signing a player like Michael Olise for £8 million, what's he worth now?
He'd be worth minimum 60 million, minimum 100%.
Do you see what I'm saying? And then you look at
Adam Wharton as well, because he's a talent. He's a talent, and
he is. And you look at Adam Wharton last night, £18 million, John.
Yeah.
Now people were saying to me, Kobbie Mainoo, great young player, brilliant at Manchester United, but you could have fooled me. Who was more likely to get on the England plane? Because God love Mainoo, he had no help yesterday. But Adam Wharton had him dog walked. It was brilliant to see from a Crystal Palace perspective, because Blackburn Rovers fans, they badly needed that 18 million, but they feel mugged. So you can imagine if we're spending 18 million on a player that's unproven at Premier League level prior to joining, you're thinking, wow. But bear in mind, Freedman had to go through that hit and miss period where he had a lot of misses and not too many hits. Max Meyer was meant to be the one that was the catalyst, where we got him from Schalke on a Bosman. Yeah, that didn't quite go to plan. Decent player, but too much hype, not enough substance, you know. So I would say if Freedman does go to Newcastle, it's going to sting for us as fans, because he's done this to us before, where a club with better resources comes in and tries to swoop him. Now, again, I personally wouldn't blame him, because if he's offered the opportunity to work with better resources and attract a better caliber of player at a bigger club, then look, fair play to him. I mean, he's built his credentials off a solid portfolio of players he's attracted to Crystal Palace. He convinced Manchester United to part with £50 million for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who is not a £50 million player. And I don't mean to, denigrate on my own club's academy, but if you'd said to me Wan-Bissaka was 50 million when he first broke out, I'd have said, yeah, I could see it. But now I'm like, how do we Jedi mind trick them into taking 50 million, into giving us 50 million for him? That was the steal of the century, So, I mean, John, I don't know if Freedman would be the bona fide, all-out, get the megastar kind of director of football. But if you're looking as a Newcastle fan for the odd sprinkle of magic here and there, but signing players that Newcastle fans can go, do you know what? He's proper good. And you don't have to debate, is spending 50 million on a kid from Swindon worth it? Because if you get someone from Swindon or someone from, let's say Wrexham as an example, and you spend 4 million on them, you're thinking 4 million is nothing to Newcastle, but he becomes a 40 million pound player. That's 10 times profit. It's crazy. What, you know, that sort of thing can make you think, you know what, we're onto something here. So I wouldn't blame him for leaving, but I hope he doesn't, because what he has, the opportunity he now has with someone like Oliver Glasner, he'd be a fool to leave now. Had this been under Roy Hodgson, I would have said, Dougie, run while you can, because the ship is sinking and we don't want you sinking on the ship. So, again, I wouldn't begrudge any Newcastle fan who wants to see Dougie Freedman come to the football club, because, look, as a football club, you've got unprecedented resources now at your disposal, where if you're clever with them, you can tweak it very carefully. I mean, there's a lot of players at Newcastle you've got to get rid of. You know that, I know that. You know, you could give me a list of players that need to be cleared out. But if you bring in someone like Freedman, I would not say he's going to sign you megastars, but he'll sign you players that become megastars. Because before Elise joined, I couldn't tell you a thing about him.
No.
So that's the sort of thing that you have to contend with, is you're not signing players that you can go, oh, I saw him play for PSG, he's proper good. You're like, no, we could get him to play for PSG if we sell him to PSG. That's the mentality he brings. It's not, let's just sell our best players year in, year out. He says, do you know what? If we have to sell Michael Elise, let's give him the platform to show how good he is, and how £8 million can turn into 60 million, 70 million. I wouldn't really go higher than 70 personally, because Cristiano Ronaldo went for 8 million in 2009 to Real Madrid. As much as I love Elise, he's not CR7. You know, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna jump over the barrel, so to speak.
I know exactly what you mean. You don't want to put Elise in alongside Ronaldo yet.
Oh no. But what I mean is that, like, Elise's ceiling is massively high, and so is Dougie Freedman's, because if he's given the time and the fans are patient with someone like Dougie Freedman, you'll be rewarded. But as I said, I wouldn't expect megastars straight away. You're gonna get a few players from the lower leagues that you're like, why are we spending 2 million on a guy from Peterborough? Peterborough are trash. But then that kid from Peterborough turns out to be one of your best players. You're like, oh, now I see why we spent 2 million on this guy. He's actually quality. And then another club comes in and you're making 15, 16, 17, 18 million pound profit. You're thinking, do you know what? You might be onto something there. So, as I said, look, Freedman is the type of DOF that if he's given time, he can make things happen. But time is the key. If you're expecting instant success and instant megastars, he's not the one. Now, he's got the ability to be that guy. I won't talk him down here. But
I was going to come on to that as well. Can he attract a world-class player to come to Newcastle United? Is he that kind of guy? Or do you think he preferred to buy young players coming through the club? Because I've noticed he likes to buy young players, like you said, Elise, Eze, Ortez, and the Wharton as well. Is he gonna attract? Can he attract a world-class young player? Can he get that future superstar to come to Newcastle United from abroad? And is Dougie Freedman a big name in European football?
Okay, so what I would say is that because Dougie Freedman's job has relatively got under the radar since he's been at Crystal Palace, because remember, you've heard all about Dan Ashworth, who was at Brighton, and now Newcastle is now looking to go to Man United. You've heard about the guy that was at Southampton for years, who was peddling players to Liverpool, Man United on the regular for big money. Dougie Freedman has not really been blessed with sellable assets at Crystal Palace until very recently, because we're expecting to lose any of, say, Mark Gay, Elise, possibly Eze. So can Freedman attract megastars? I would say if Newcastle give him the time to build up the club's portfolio, where you can say, look, Newcastle are not a bona fide season in, season out European competing team, but the ambition is going to be backed, not only matched, but it's going to be backed because you've brought in a manager who plays an attractive brand of football. It can be hit and miss with Eddie Howe, as you well know. It's not concrete and bulletproof, but for the most part, he got Newcastle Champions League football against all expectation and reason. But again, you have owners with very deep pockets who are prepared to invest in the club, in the infrastructure, in the city, in the local community. So it's not just what can Dougie Freedman do for player A on the pitch. It's can Dougie Freedman convince someone to move to Newcastle upon Tyne, which, okay, everybody has that saying of it's grim up north, but I've been to Newcastle plenty of times. It's a lovely city, you know, lovely people up there. I know you don't like Southerners too much, but let's be fair, you know, everybody has their own personal hates and favourites. But I think because Dougie Freedman's from Scotland and he knows all too well about bad weather because he's from Scotland.
Yeah.
Again, as I said, I can't guarantee he'd sign megastars at Newcastle, but he'd sign players that become megastars. If you're signing a player from the Championship for £6 million, 6 million is nothing to Newcastle. It's nothing to most Premier League clubs nowadays. But if you're signing a player for £6 million and out of nowhere, after 2-3 years in a black and white shirt, he becomes the linchpin of your Newcastle team, you're like, how did we sign this guy for £6 million? Yeah. That's what we do with Elise. We're looking at him going, you're telling me we signed this guy for £8 million. Reading must be looking at that release clause going, why on earth did we put such a low release clause in his contract? You know, so I think Freedman would do really well at Newcastle. I hope he doesn't go, for the record. I really hope he stays at Crystal Palace. But as I said to you before we started recording, I don't blame him for going if he chooses to go, but I personally would think Newcastle needs someone who's got that European flair. So this other person that's on the shortlist alongside Freedman, and this is without even bias speaking here, I think that candidate probably is more of a clear-cut favourite for European and continental, like South America, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Freedman brought Mateus França from, was it Fluminense? I think it was Fluminense.
I believe he came from Flamengo.
Flamengo. So it was one of those. But França hasn't had the start we would have liked to have seen this season. But Crystal Palace don't sign Mateus França without Dougie Freedman. We can't convince Mateus França to leave Brazil and turn down the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona. They didn't come in with concrete offers. They didn't come in with offers for him. But the minute you're hearing Real Madrid and Barcelona want you, any talk of a move to the Premier League, it's like, well, yeah, that's great that X wants me and Y wants me, but it's Real Madrid and Barcelona. It's every South American's dream to play for either Barca or Real. So hopefully Glasner gets a season with França. But to wrap this up, because I know we both have to move on shortly.
Yeah.
Freedman, if given time and patience from the from the Newcastle United support, my apologies, from the Newcastle support, and I know you've been a very patient fan base. You haven't won trophies in years, so you're not one to expect that you're amazing. But if he was to get the job, you have to give him a few years where he's going to get a few things wrong to get things right. That's the way it works with him. But if you're looking for someone who's bona fide, tried and tested, proven, proof is in the pudding, Freedman could and couldn't be that guy, if that makes sense, is what I would say. But again, if he does choose to leave, I'd be heartbroken, but I'd understand, because the opportunity to work at a club like Newcastle with the resources you now have, if he does turn it down, I'd be shocked, but it's a great opportunity for him. And I can't begrudge him that, because look, I'm a football fan first and foremost. Yes, I can be biased and I can see things with red and blue glasses on, but end of the day, if I'm offered the chance to work for a club like Newcastle and I don't have any prior loyalties, then I'd think about it. But hopefully he stays. But if he goes, then best of luck to him. But
thanks for it.
We shall see.
One final question before we wrap up the show as well. Just quickly on Newcastle, Eddie Howe, is he the long-term manager at Newcastle United? Because for me, he's done a fantastic job. Newcastle.
That's a very good question, because from the outside looking in, Eddie Howe has done exceptionally well to have Newcastle compete twice in 2 seasons for European football. Now, yes, a club of your size and your pedigree should be in that European football conversation, because I am old enough to remember Lamana Luar and Alan Shearer playing in the Champions League alongside the likes of Nobby Solano, Lauren Robert, Mark Viduka, those kind of players. I remember, Celestine Babayaro and Titus Bramble and all these other. I remember Newcastle having Champions League nights under the late great Sir Bobby Robson, rest in peace. So I personally think Eddie Howe has done sensational, but I don't think he gets the credit he deserves sometimes because he's overshadowed by managers at other football clubs. Look at last night's result as a prime example. It's all about how bad Manchester United were. Mm-hmm. And you're only hearing fleetings of how good Crystal Palace were. That's what Eddie Howe is up against at Newcastle.
Yeah.
Because for years and years and years and years and years and years and years under Mike Ashley, you guys were hounded for, what do you expect? You're Newcastle, you're mid-table, you're in the relegation pack. But I've always said to that, a club like Newcastle shouldn't be in that relegation conversation. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're down there because they deserve to be down there at the time that was happening. But I'm old enough to remember Newcastle in the Champions League. I can remember the year you won the Intertoto Cup. And granted, I know that's a Mickey Mouse Cup, but my point is that I'm able to remember that Newcastle at one point in time were a club that was consistently competing for top 8 in the Premier League, and prior to that in the old Division 1. So this notion that you as Newcastle fans shouldn't expect to compete is ludicrous. Because what's the point of being in the Premier League if you don't compete? Even if it means that Newcastle finished 9th and 8th. Yes, that's disappointing from a Newcastle perspective, but you're saying to yourself, you'd take this over finishing 17th and worrying about them lot on we're side. Because for years and years and years, your fate was tied to theirs. Somehow they managed to escape relegation, and you're hoping that somebody sends them down, and by miracle, until they eventually did go down, they kept surviving. Now, obviously, you won't be playing them for a while, but you see what I mean, John? There's too many people that don't give Eddie Howe the credit he deserves, because Eddie Howe has not spent Manchester City levels of money. Yes, he spent money, but he hasn't signed Mbappe. He hasn't signed Pedri. He's literally had to work with players that, let's be real, are either past their best at Newcastle or just aren't good enough. There's only a handful of players in a black and white shirt that you'd say, do you know what? They're Newcastle level players. The likes of Bruno, Alexander Isak. Sorry, hang on. Sorry about that. Had to mute my Amazon headphones.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But look, John, you know yourself that there are players at Newcastle that you're saying to yourself, a few years ago, they'd be Newcastle level players. But no disrespect to the Longstaff brothers, but Geordies are not. Those guys are not good for Newcastle. And I get it, homegrown players, academy players, you want to see the local lads do well. Yeah. But for where Newcastle want to be, you need to be getting 10 million for one Longstaff and 5 for the other one. At a minimum.
You saying that Sean Longstaff's not good enough for Newcastle, in your opinion?
I'm not saying he's not good enough, but I'm saying he's not the player to take Newcastle to where your fans expect you to be.
I agree.
He has the opportunity, he has the potential to improve and become a better player. But the sentiment surrounding players like Longstaff, and look, we're guilty of it with Tyrick Mitchell, for example. He's an academy player at Palace. So the sentiment around academy players is you want to see local lads do well, even when you're thinking, but maybe if we did sell him and we get someone in who's better, we might be better off. Because up until very recently, I was happy to see Nathaniel Klein out the door in the summer, but now the kid, he's playing out of his skin. Granted, he's a much older Nathaniel Klein, but again, the academy sentiment has overridden me wanting to see a player brought in to replace him. I'm now thinking, do you know what? He might be an option for a spare centre-back. So you see what I mean? Is that, look, I don't think Sean Longstaff, for example, is a bad player. I think there's a player there. But would I put him in the bracket of players to take Newcastle into that Europa League, Champions League bracket? At this moment in time, probably not. But given the opportunity to develop, and if he gets more minutes ahead of the likes of Almiron, who I think should be moved on, possibly, And look, don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on the kid, but I don't think at this moment in time he's that player to kick you on to the next level that your owners and your fans expect you to be. And this is coming from someone who doesn't watch a minute of Newcastle outside of playing Crystal Palace. So the potential for someone like Longstaff to succeed is there. Whether or not he gets the opportunity and takes the opportunity, that's where he'll be he'll be judged on. But yeah, look, yeah, I mean, look, Eddie Howe, man, if I had to give him a rating out of 10 for the job he's done, it's a solid 9.5. Because I can't find much of a fault to give him, really. Because when he came in, you know, everybody was saying, oh, why would you sack Steve Bruce? He's the perfect. It's like, no, I'm a survivor of Steve Bruce football. Steve Bruce keeps you up and stops you getting relegated, but his football is garbage. His attitude towards the club is garbage. Geordie or not, take out the fact that he's one of yours. You're thinking, so what? He's one of us. He's not King Kev. He's not Alan Shearer. He's not Peter Beardsley. He's not people that you hold dear to the club. And you're like, you know what? Yeah, you're one of us. Win, lose, or draw, no matter what, we love you. You're like, no, he can go tomorrow. He can go with Mike Ashley and Dennis Wise and the Cockney Mafia that you had back in the day. This is the thing that people forget, is that look, your ambitions as Newcastle fans should not be, let's just compete. And you've said this countless times on our channel. We've said this to you on your channel as well, John. I think Newcastle with Eddie Howe will be a problem for a lot of the establishment, because they don't want another team pushing that envelope further, because Brighton gave them a bloody nose last season. I hate saying it, but reality is reality.
Yeah.
Why should Newcastle be in that conversation? That's what I'll leave it on. That's where I'll leave it.
Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on, Natty. Really appreciate that. Newcastle fans are going to love you for that as well. But before I let you go, can you just tell us where we can find you, please, on your channel, so people can find you?
Yeah, of course. So you can find us on EyedFootball. We are a Crystal Palace fan channel. We talk mainly things Palace, but we also talk a little bit about other football as well. By all means, please do like, share, and subscribe to us. But obviously, you have to keep it locked here to John Sinclair TV, one of the nicest guys in the game. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
A real Don from day one. He's our guy. We love him at EyedFootball. We got nothing but love for him. And more importantly, he's one of the real Geordie people out there, because there's too many people that want to be Newcastle fans now. But John's been a Geordie since day one, and we love him for that. So, yeah, you can find us on EyedFootball. And Geordies, I'll ask you this for a favour. When you play United next Wednesday, if you see Casemiro, just make sure he's okay. Because I'm nearly sure Michael Elise murdered him. I'm nearly sure he got murdered at Selhurst Park. But, yeah, I'll leave it there. Big up to NUFC. Big up to all the Geordies. And obviously, we'll see you lot next season. Oh, and how you beat Man United, just watch the highlights of our game. Because beating United is very, very easy these days. Who would ever thought that?
Natty, you know what? I'm coming with beating these lot next week. I'm not scared of these lot. We're going to beat them next week. Trust us. Isak, Wilson, Gordon are going to terrorise that back four.
All I'm going to say is you may have to. Is it at Old Trafford or St James's Park?
It's Old Trafford.
You may have to put a call into the Greater Manchester Police, because I think 11 men are getting murdered at Old Trafford. Because I was tempted to call the Metropolitan Police. Trust me, I was like, I'm not a man that deals with police, but yeah. There's 11 men getting murdered in SC25. So it could be peak in M16 next Wednesday. It's going to be peak when they play Arsenal. But look, hopefully Newcastle batter them, because United get battered everywhere they go.
Yes, I love it, man. Brilliant stuff. Natty, you're a character, man. I love it a bit, man. You're also going to come back on. Make sure you come back on again. And if you like the video, like what you watch, make sure you like and subscribe. I'm going to put the link in the title as well, so you can follow Natty and EyedFootball as well. Big up to Richard and the crew as well. And thanks for coming on, Natty. And I'm sure this video will go out 9 o'clock tonight, and I'm sure the fans will be watching as well.
Yeah, listen, big up to everybody.
Big up. Take
See you
care.
later. Up the Palace.
Up the Palace.
Eagles. How were the lads?
We're nuts. That was brilliant, wasn't it?